Hello and welcome back to Sam Center. I am Coach Sam. This series is going to be breaking down all of the major conferences leading up to the Week 0 slate of games. And then once the season starts, every single week we will break down all of the major games, the reasons you should tune in. We'll talk transfers, coaching moves, and all things college football. However, we need to talk at the very beginning. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. Let's get into it. Let me start you off with the history of the Pac-12, the new Look Pac-12, which really we should be calling the Pac-9 or the Pac-8. There's now 9 teams in the conference, but how did we get to this point? In 2010, the Pac-10, as it existed at the moment, decided it wanted to expand. It was a major conference at the time, and it reached out to big schools such as Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, big names like that. Teams that have now gone on to join other major conferences, but at the time, the Pac-10 was looking to form something like the Pac-16 and make a super conference. Texas was extremely close to joining. Colorado had already committed, and there was likely to join if Texas had. Texas Tech was going to come. Oklahoma was going to join afterwards. It was just going to be a cycle like that. However, in the 23rd hour, of course, it all fell apart. And instead of the Pac-16, we had the Pac-12. Utah decided to join Colorado, and now we had this beautiful conference for many years with a rich tradition. However, there were cracks in the armor. Unfortunately, the teams were not getting paid as much as other major conferences. USC and UCLA started the movement as they had released that they were getting $20 million a year from the Pac-12 and were offered $50 million a year to play in the Big Ten. So they jumped ship, and later on, the University of Washington and Oregon, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, all ended up departing to either the Big Ten or the Big 12, while Cal and Stanford ended up going to the ACC, and then we're left with 2. So the Pac-10, the Pac-12, and now the Pac-2. Washington State and Oregon State decided that instead of jumping ship and completely disbanding the conference altogether, they would stay and attempt to rebuild. And that's exactly what happened, as the Mountain West essentially had their complete renaissance out, and now the Pac-12 is reborn. A lot of new teams have joined the fold. Gonzaga has joined as specifically a basketball-only school. However, the football schools now, in order of what are predicted, at least for preseason rankings: Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Washington State, Texas State, Utah State, Oregon State, and Colorado State. Those are the 8 football teams that we're going to break down in this video. But first and foremost, let's talk the conference and why this conference is unique. There's a lot of other times in college football where you're watching during the year and Alabama might be playing Mercer or some school where they're going to go and blow them out by 56 points. Whereas the Pac-12 does things a little bit differently. I'll put up the schedule right now. Weeks 1 to 4 are specifically non-conference play. But if you look at the non-conference schedule for a lot of these teams, they're playing some pretty good schools. You'll see teams like Oregon, the University of Houston, Texas Tech, and some other big names that these teams will go on the road or they'll play and host in their home stadium. And obviously, non-conference play is important if you want to join the college football playoffs. There's one team outside of the Power 4 conferences that's guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff. Last year, you saw both Tulane and James Madison making it. So for teams in the Pac-12, winning this conference, being the best conference outside of the P4, will most likely cement yourself as a college football team. So, as a college football playoff team. So if you need to win a couple of these non-conference games, and then we go into conference play. This is the cool part about the Pac-12. It's a round robin for the next weeks. Weeks 5 through 12, the teams are going to play each other and they're going to only play each other. So this is where conference play starts for a lot of teams, but you're guaranteed action in the Pac-12 and you're guaranteed Pac-12 games. Not just random games that will matter for the standings every single week. And as we talk some of these teams, we don't exactly know what they'll look like transitioning to a major conference. So there's a lot of reasons you should tune in every single week. And then week 13 is where things get exciting. There is a flex week. The conference will decide based off of what is best for the conference and what is best for the team specifically, what the matchups will look like in that week. And you might be thinking to yourself, Coach Sam, that sounds dumb. How can you prepare for that? And in theory, you should know generally what's going to happen leading up to the week. They won't set the matchups that far in advance, but what they said is that they'll make it the best for the teams in the conference. If there's two teams that need to play each other and the winner of that has the best chance to make the college football playoffs, they're going to schedule that game instead of a 1 versus an 8 seed that has really no merit at all and will not help that team in the standings at all. And to me, this is brilliant by the Pac-12. They are asking teams to remain competitive and say, hey, if you can get to that week 13, we're going to put you on a showcase game for you to prove yourself and make the college football playoffs. And then they move into their championship, which is hosted at the higher seeded team's home field. It's not a neutral site game. To me, the Pac-12 is doing everything right. Pac-12, Pac-8, whatever we want to call it, they've relaunched. This is a conference that you should be excited about. Now let's break down the 8 teams into 2 tiers. Contenders, and then maybe the teams who it's not quite their time just yet. All right, let's talk the 4 teams in the conference who I think are just not quite ready yet. We're going to talk a lot of rebuilding, but I could be completely wrong. That's the fun of all of this. Let's get into it. The first team we're going to talk about, Colorado State, under first-year head coach Jim Mora. Jim Mora obviously having a great pedigree, coming from the NFL and coming from various schools across college football where he has proven he can turn your program around and he can turn it around in a hurry. It's not like Colorado State was dead in the water terrible, but the pedigree that Jim Mora brings, now you can get higher level recruits, transfers wanting to come to your school, and that's exactly what we saw. Good recruiting in this offseason, and it's a sneaky good transfer quarterback coming over to join the program. Jim Mora's pedigree at UConn, a team that was independent and is remaining independent, hasn't joined a major conference. You look and you say, so okay, at UConn, they were horrible for many years. 4-32 before Jim Mora took over, and then they were able to qualify for a bowl in his very first season, going 6-7. Following it up with 2 9-win seasons at a school that is not known for football whatsoever. They are obviously a basketball school. Jim Mora completely changed the culture. We'll see what they look like without him. As part of our independent we break down, I think UConn is going to have a horrible season. A lot of guys left. Their quarterback specifically left to join Jim Mora at Colorado, so I think the familiarity there could lead this team to looking pretty good. It might take them a couple weeks to gel. It might take them a couple weeks into the season to learn their system. That's why I think it's not quite their year and they're rebuilding. But look for Colorado State to make some noise in the coming seasons under Jim Mora and potentially have some of their players be a hotbed for transfers to other major programs. Another new team, Utah State, under Bronco Mendenhall. They have a solid enough team. They have a good returning quarterback and they have a good transfer wide receiver that just came in that should probably open up things on offense for them. A good offensive line. They're able to just be solid on offense. Their defense, however, is most likely going to be bad. At least bad at the start of the season, and I think this is why we have Utah State and that it's not quite your year this year. Unfortunately, 17 new players from Power 4 programs. A lot of them obviously weren't starters. You're talking guys who are maybe lower down on the depth chart, looking for a fresh start at Utah State, and that's what they're able to offer. So you have to see how these players gel. A lot of potential in that room, but I think they're starting to build something. With this new Pac-12, they're going to be able to attract a lot of recruits from the Power 4, and that's what we're going to talk about a lot in this video, repeating it with a lot of teams. Good recruiting classes because they're able to form this new conference, have some respect. However, I think Bronco Mendenhall's team over at Utah State probably going to finish near the bottom of the conference. In my opinion, I think they'll probably be at the bottom of the conference, maybe in competition with Oregon State. You know, Jamarcus Shepard and Oregon over there, Oregon State, they are a team that stayed as the Pac-2 with Washington State. They remained loyal to the conference, so they deserve a lot of credit for that. They have a lot of returning starters, and specifically at quarterback, they have a battle between their returning starter and a couple transfer quarterbacks. A guy from the University of Michigan, of Western Michigan, but then specifically the star quarterback transfer from Mercer, the team that we joked about in the beginning, saying they're just going to go get beat by Alabama. And that's what happened every week. However, they have the winner of the Jerry Rice Award, and this award is given to the best player at the FCS level, and other big names have won it in the past. Cooper Kupp, Trey Lance, Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, NFL caliber players, and in the case of Cooper Kupp and Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, Trey Lance, first round draft picks, right? So you're talking about a high pedigree of guys who have won this award. I would look for him to win that starting job at Oregon State and now have a potential to, if you have one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, if he can show the level that he played at Mercer, if he can play up to this level with some higher competition, Oregon State has a good chance to progress and win a few games that maybe they shouldn't win. The other half of the Pac-2, Washington State, under Kirby Moore. He is coming over as the previous offensive coordinator at Missouri for multiple years, and he showed some good success there. And so there's a lot of reasons for optimism. Unfortunately, because of the departure of their former head coach to Iowa State, there's a lot of turnover on this roster. They had to go to the transfer portal by necessity. That can be good and bad. There's guys to be excited about, and obviously some of his former players could come over and join Kirby. However, 12 defensive starters left, and that specifically is going to hurt them big time. 12 defensive starters from this team in Washington State followed their coach over to Iowa State. So there's going to be a lot of turnover, a lot of reasons for optimism though. You have a head coach now who is really creative in play calling, an offense led by a new quarterback who might be able to go out there and really prove that he's able to put up a lot of points, or you have some returning guys able to add some competition. I just think Washington State is going to start the season slow and end it strong, which will affect their ability to contend in the Pac-12. Now, Sam Center, Coach Sam, he does his notes. Let's talk the top 4 teams. In order for where I think they're going to finish, I think Texas State coming over is going to probably finish in that top 4. G.J. Kine and the offense over there at Texas State is going to be extremely fun. They can move the ball. They came over from the Sun Belt, where all the other teams in the conference came over from the Mountain West, and they were the best team in the Sun Belt at offense. They were able to move it, and they were able to create big plays through the ground and through the air. Unfortunately, 14 fumbles was massive, but they were 5th in the nation in yards gained. So there's a give and take to that, right? They're creating explosive plays. Maybe guys are being not great with ball security, but other teams in the Pac-12 are now specifically going to have to look out. Brad Jackson had 21 pass TDs and 17 rush TDs. So you're looking at an offense who they can run a lot of different styles. They have a quarterback who can beat you through the air, beat you through the ground. Unfortunately, their defense needs to improve. They didn't bring in a lot of transfers this offseason. Specifically, that's different than a lot of other teams joining this new Pac-12. A lot of the Mountain West teams got a lot of new transfers, while this team coming over from the Sun Belt didn't. So we're going to have to see if they're able to compete. I think they are going to be able to. I just think there's a couple other teams at the top of the conference that might be tough to contend with. Moving on, I think San Diego State might get upset and finish 3rd in the conference. You know, they're going to run the ball. Sean Lewis's team is specifically running the ball and running you down and making sure that the clock and the game is controlled. And that can be really good. They have a lot of good offensive linemen and a lot of good running backs, but they weren't really able to move the ball through the air very much on offense, and that has its limitations. The biggest problem to me is that their defense is completely decimated. They had to go to the transfer portal, and the guys they got are completely unproven at every single position. They had a lot of guys move on. They had a first-round draft pick to the Miami Dolphins from their defense. They had 2 stars go to Nebraska, and their biggest star, their edge rusher, go over to Texas Tech. So you're replacing multiple cornerbacks, multiple guys on your defensive line, and your edge rusher. I think that's just going to be really, really tough. With a couple other teams like Texas State, Fresno State, and Boise State having explosive offenses, I think San Diego State is going to finish 3rd in the new look Pac-12. And now, the top 2 teams who will play in the championship according to Coach Sam, Fresno State and Boise State. Let's start with Matt Entz's team in Fresno State. I think that they will be just fine. The key for them is to just keep running the ball and finishing strong. They were 9-4 last season, and they control the game the same way we talked about San Diego State, but to an even greater extent. They run the ball so much. If they run the ball 32 times or more in a game, last year they were 8-0. When they didn't, they were 1-4. And so that's the key to the offense for Fresno State. They did bring in Maryland transfer quarterback Christian Martin, and I think that has the potential to change the offense a little bit because they really need to move the ball and give teams a reason to not just load the box, because when they're successful in their game plan, they can get ahead of teams and run the ball and pass effectively. They are one of the hardest teams to beat in all of college football, and they are this sneaky team, in my opinion, to come out of this conference and make the college football playoffs. Official Coach Sam prediction is that Fresno State is going to beat Boise State in the championship of the Pac-12 and make it to the college football playoffs as the number 11 seed. Or whatever seed they end up making them beat, right? But they're going to be that team that gets the automatic bid. And the reason I believe this is because their defense was really good. It was the best in the Mountain West last year. They have a lot of returning starters. They have some turnover. They have to replace both of their starting cornerbacks. And I think that could be a bit of an issue. But this conference specifically doesn't have a lot of big arms. So I'm not sure I'm totally worried about that. They're one of the bigger teams on defense in the trenches. And with the quarterback transfer, with being able to control and dominate the ball with their offensive line, look for Fresno State to make the college football playoffs and win the Pac-12. And now the team that they'll most likely have to contend with is Boise State. Spencer Danielson and this team were absolutely dominant in the Mountain West for many years. Out of the past 14 seasons in the Mountain West, Boise State won 7 championships, and specifically they won the last 3. They have big names like Alvin Gentry, who was a first-round draft pick to the Las Vegas Raiders, and they were able to make the college football playoffs just 2 years ago. This team, led by Maddox Manson, a guy who got hurt last season but was able to return late and show that he's okay, if he can have a full offseason recovered, coming back strong with this O-line, with their running back. And unfortunately, they lost all of their wide receivers, some due to graduation, some due to transfer. So that's going to be the biggest thing. They reloaded through the transfer portal at wide receiver, but they still have a veteran quarterback, a veteran offensive lineman, a good head coach who knows how to win, a pedigree of winning at Boise State. The blue field is iconic. They have some of the coolest moments in all of college football history. A really solid defense, 39th in the nation last year. They're usually top 50-ish. So that is going to contend in this conference. I think it's going to be a battle all season long. I believe they'll probably win 8 or 9 games. Fresno State will probably do the same, and we'll see them battle for that championship game. But let me know in the comments what you think. That wraps up our new look Pac-12. Moving on with the rest of the week, obviously we're going to talk so much more. I hope you enjoyed. Sam Center out.
Yo, I'm sat on the throne, but I'm looking at the blueprints. Building a temple where the spirit leaves its footprints. You be a knight's the most high. Asked what I'm needing, didn't ask for peas or for enemies to be bleeding. I asked for the wisdom, the hokmah, the insight to distinguish the dark from the frequency of light. See, I built the first house, cedar, wood and gold plate between Jeshurun and Boaz, standing at the gate. The pillars of the world, severity and mercy. The path is narrow, man, the road is getting thirsty, but the temple laid stone, that's the trick for the blind. The real masonry is the structure of the mind. Seal of the king, 2 triangles entwined. The lower reflecting the upper design. Master of the spirits, I made the demons work. Building up the temple where the shadows used to lurk. It's the wisdom of Solomon, ground, building up the spirit while the system falling down. Building up the spirit. Yeah, they say I had the ring, the brass and the iron, commanding the glacier, the wolf and the lion. See, the demons are just facets of the ego and the greed. I harness the shadows to plant the holy seed. You gotta kill the beast, you gotta make it move the blocks. Put the vices in the furnace, turning keys inside the lock. 72 spirits, yeah, I kept them in the vessel. Every conscious man has a demon he must wrestle. If you don't control the lower, then the lower controls you. That's how the temple falls and the spirit gets through. I saw the vanity, the chasing of the wind, but the wisdom is the treasure underneath the skin. I sat with the queen, yeah, she brought the riddle, trying to find a set and not the sides or the middles. She saw the cupbearer, the order of the table. Realize that history is more than just a fable. It's the key of Solomon, the magic in the map, finding your geometry on the righteous path. From the quarry to the corner, I'm the stone they rejected. To the master workman saw the spirit was perfected. Modern day Solomon and building in ends, turning all the haters and the demons into friends. The temple is complete when the heart is in tune. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the moon. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, unless you know the